After losing 3 straight and looking all but figured out, the Timberwolves responded with an overwhelming performance in Game 6 as they made all the right adjustments to give themselves an advantage. Jokic absolutely fried them in Game 5, recording 40 points and 13 assists on 77% true shooting without turning the ball over a single time. A lot of those numbers came as a result of going right at Rudy Gobert while the Wolves left him in single coverage, allowing him to get to his spot every single time. So on the first play of Game 6, when Jokic posts up Towns, Ant comes to double from up top, while Rudy roams near the paint to play cleanup at the basket. They made it clear right away that priority number 1 was to not let Jokic get a clean look out of the post all night. This time he's got McDaniels, and Gobert commits to the ball, not worried about what happens behind him. The first key to limiting Jokic in the post is making sure Cat stays on him, and there are 2 reasons why this is so important. First is that it keeps Gobert away from the ball as a roamer, where he can do what he does best as a rim protector. Second is that Cat has a wider base and a stronger lower body, so he can bother the MVP a bit more with his physicality. In Game 5, Jokic was making an effort to get Cat switched off of him with the use of screens, but instead of conceding the switch, you're going to see Cat make a deliberate effort to go under, which leaves Jokic with a ton of space on the perimeter, but they're willing to live with him taking threes. More times than not, these screens are going to be some sort of inverted pick and roll with Aaron Gordon, and even if Cat gets caught, Gobert's sitting back in a more traditional drop coverage as he forces the big man into a travel. Whenever Jokic did get the ball in the post, whether it was a favorable matchup or not, the Wolves were going to send that double from up top, basically telling Denver that they'll let any of the role players beat them with shot making. And there's a lot more going on than just the initial double. When Ant commits to Jokic, notice how the rest of the defense shifts one pass over. The best way to counter this is with a quick swing pass to the corner, but Porter misses it and tries his hand at a pull-up 3. For reference, here's what it looked like when that extra pass was made. The entire defense is shifting, Holiday sets a perfect screen, and KCP ends up with a wide open corner 3. This is the risk when it comes to doubling Jokic on every touch. He's an all-time great passer, so you'll have to live with plays like this where he skips the second and third pass and finds the corner himself, although Holiday's unable to knock down the jumper. Or this one from the third quarter where that double comes from up top, he spins away from it on a baseline drive and counters the shift by finding Porter on the opposite wing for yet another missed opportunity. As I said earlier, the Wolves basically told the Nuggets that they would let any of those role guys beat them with outside shooting, and to say that worked out would be an understatement. Denver shot 7 of 36, or 19.4% from 3, which sounds bad, but it gets so much worse. According to NBA.com, 31 of those 36 were either considered open or wide open, and they made 6 of them, or once again 19.4%. If you're a Denver hopeful, I can tell you right now that it's very unlikely this level of poor shooting will be replicated. Impossible? Of course not, it's just highly improbable. With that said, 36 threes is higher than their season average of 31.2, so in some ways they did sort of play into Minnesota's scheme, and much more alarming was their lack of paint scoring, just 36 points in the paint as opposed to their typical average of 49.1. That's where Rudy Gobert as a roamer comes in. As long as he stays away from Jokic and the ball, he's basically serving as a free safety behind the defense, stepping in front of cuts or drives, and knowing that he'll be there if they get beat, the perimeter players are able to get a lot more aggressive with their closeouts. He had some truly remarkable possessions, like this one covering both Jokic and the ball at the same time, and forcing a much lower percentage floater from Christian Brown. Or this one where he's matched up with Gordon one-on-one, slides his feet to shut off the rim, before smothering a mid-range jumper that results in an air ball. Even in the few times he switched on to Jokic, his presence was still felt all over the floor. First, he steps in front of a potential drive from Porter, then he closes out to the perimeter to get a hand up on the big man, only to get attacked off the catch and recover to alter a shot at the basket. Here's one where he's matched up with Jokic in the post, and you still have that double from up top, The entire defense is in rotation, Porter beats a closeout, only to run into the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. In addition to the sheer presence of Gobert, another way the Wolves shut off the paint was with how they approached the pick and roll. For most of the series, they've been having the big sort of bait towards the ball before getting back to Jokic, and with Gobert roaming, that's a really effective strategy. However, when Gobert's the one defending the screen, it doesn't work nearly as well because there isn't a second Gobert stepping over to shut off the paint. So a big key for them was mixing up the coverage. This time you're going to see Rudy come up to the level in a hedge, and it's Cat who's stepping up to the ball. Jamal definitely could have gotten it to Gordon on a lob, but he instead tries a tougher floater. It was the same thing when Gobert was out of the game. Cat's defending the screen, and he's going to play it in an actual drop coverage to protect the paint, while Jaden McDaniels absolutely hounds him from behind. Here's another one from less than a minute later against Reggie Jackson. Cat drops back and plays the ball, Reed steps over from the corner to put a body in front of Jokic, and throwing different looks each time is a great way to keep the offense from getting comfortable. So let's just quickly recap some of what I saw the Wolves do differently in Game 6. You have the double teams against Jokic, bringing a second defender from up top and shifting everyone one pass over, which forced role players to carry the scoring load unsuccessfully. Instead of switching on Jokic as he comes off of screens, they went under to keep their matchups, letting the big man shoot as many threes as he wanted. That kept Gobert as a roamer for most of the game, where he can play to his strengths as one of the most impactful rim protectors ever. Against pick and roll, they mixed it up depending on who was on the court, overplaying Jokic whenever Gobert was there to clean up, and either going to a hedge or a drop in other situations to keep Jamal guessing. And while all of those things undoubtedly made a difference, the Nuggets definitely shot themselves in the foot in more ways than one. If we take it back a few days, a huge adjustment that they made in Game 3 was running action towards an open corner instead of the middle of the floor so that ball handlers could operate in more space and with less help. In Game 6, they just completely abandoned that adjustment. Pretty much everything was run towards the middle, and the exact same problem showed up. Another big adjustment for them in this series, primarily in Game 4, was having either Gordon or Jokic bring the ball up as a point. Jamal was really struggling with ball pressure, so one of those guys could get it across midcourt and then set up the offense, to which the Wolves had no idea what to do in terms of matchups or pressure. Gordon in particular as an initiator is a great way to stretch Gobert. He can't roam as freely when his man has the ball up top, and they can get into some of the action that makes them such a lethal offense. But like I said, they abandoned this for the most part and had Jamal playing like a traditional point guard again, which unleashed that Minnesota ball pressure that led the way for a 2-0 lead in the first place. For the most part, it was Ant who was just all over Jamal, picking him up full court, sticking with him through screens, playing physical. Jamal couldn't shake him no matter how much action they got into, and that made everything significantly more difficult for him as a creator. It also hurt him away from the ball. On this one, Ant is top blocking the handoff, so Jamal thinks he has a backdoor cut, only for the pass to get deflected into the hands of Gobert, who was ready to protect that rim. As a result of these issues, Jamal couldn't get anything going whatsoever. He shot 1 of 10 in the first half and 4 of 18 overall. Some of it was the game being made tougher, and he was also missing most of his decent looks. Just not a good performance, and the same goes for MPJ. He was 3 of 9, many of those misses being open, but he looked completely out of rhythm, like on this one where he comes off a screen and has a wide open 3, only to instead step into a way worse look from the mid-range. When you nullify Jokic's one-on-one scoring, role players aren't hitting threes, the number 2 and number 3 shot makers can't throw a rock into the ocean, and as a unit they're shooting themselves in the foot, it's only reasonable that it'll lead to some bad offensive results. But I'm not sure anyone could have prepared for how bad it actually would be. Here's a look at their offensive rating by game in this series. After that disaster of a Game 2, they had a ridiculous turnaround with 3 straight games at historic efficiency. In Game 6, they were considerably worse than even Game 2, an offensive rating of 76.1. That alone would be cause for a blowout Minnesota win, and in addition to that, they made some nice tweaks to their own offense. Well, the main adjustment was just simply getting Mike Conley back in the lineup. He's a capable initiator, which takes a ton of pressure off of Ant, and he poses some interesting threats in the pick and roll. For most of the series, Jokic has been playing these in a deep drop, but once that pull-up three starts hitting, it makes things tough, and he trusts Gobert as a finisher more than anyone else on the roster. Whenever he's in the game, the offense has so much more variety. Ant can spot up in the corner and take a play off while turning Denver's best point of attack defender into a non-factor, and Conley can initiate set action as the possession ends with a wide open dunk. The most important thing with Conley though is how much he helps Ant as a connector. When Ant draws a double, instead of having to make a super advanced decision, he can give the ball up to Conley one pass away, who can survey the floor and make the decision for him. This time he finds McDaniels in the corner for a quick drive off the catch as he takes it to the rim with authority. Knowing that Ant is the biggest threat, they can also use him as a decoy to make life easier for Conley. Notice how Jokic is worried about the ball and not the flare screen being set, which leaves the veteran with a wide open jumper. Another way he made life easier for Conley, and the first major offensive adjustment, was by setting the ball screen. The attention that he draws away from the ball clears the lane for a Conley drive as he patiently works his way into that patented floater. Using Ant as a screener was a genius way to create matchup problems. With Kyle on the ball, when Jokic gets screened from Gordon's man, they're gonna switch. Except Gordon's man was Ant, so now you have the ultimate mismatch as he creates a ton of space for a corner three. Typically, when Ant has the ball, they like to run a lot of high pick and roll, particularly with Gobert screening. But throughout this series, they've really struggled to counter Denver's at-the-level coverage. They've mastered the art of rotating behind the play and basically force Gobert to be the decision maker in these spots, which he'll do correctly every now and then, but certainly not with consistency. So what happened is Ant lost trust and didn't want to make that shovel pass to Rudy. As a result, they couldn't exploit potential 4-on-3s and struggled to create advantages. In Game 6, however, they didn't try to come up with a way to counter the coverage. Instead, they basically abandoned the Ant pick and roll altogether and allowed him to play one-on-one. Not a single defender on the Nuggets can contain him off the dribble, and they already have weak rim protection as is. But as soon as his man sags off, he's stepping back into a 3. That left Denver with one option, sending 2 to the ball right away, and that worked in Game 5, but in Game 6 the Wolves came prepared. It's easy to say that the counter is good ball movement, and it's true. As long as Ant hits the open man with a timely pass, the defense will be forced into rotation, and from there the supporting guys just have to make good decisions for the possession to end with a good shot. What I was impressed with in this case though was how he used the escape dribble to make that initial pass possible. It's such a subtle thing, but it gets the ball from point A to point B uninterrupted, and from there they have the complementary talent to find a good opportunity. Like on this one, Edwards is expecting the double, so he prematurely backs away from the three-point line to create an angle. McDaniels and Conley play a little game of hot potato from there, and Jaden puts his head down on a drive where he forces his way into a pair of free throws. Speaking of Jaden, this was a massive game for him. I won't duck the smoke. I was starting to feel like he may have been a potential liability as long as he continued to shoot as poorly and as hesitantly as he was for a majority of the series. And he not only responded, he absolutely shut that notion down, scoring 21 points on 8 of 10 shooting while making countless big plays during their huge first half run. Good things happen when your 3 primary wings are all performing in the way these guys did. Conley with his pick and roll game and ability to either initiate or connect the offense as a way to take pressure off of Edwards. Ant's ability to play one-on-one and counter those aggressive double teams by patiently making the right reads as ball movement took care of the rest. Then Jaden's ability to knock down shots and play off the catch as a slasher. That still doesn't cover all of Minnesota's adjustments though. Another thing that I think stood out was the way they used Cat, particularly as a post player. They did a lot of work early in possessions with cross matches and screens to get Cat a mismatch, and then they'd run the offense through him, which forced the Nuggets into some tough decisions. On this one, it's a soft double from up top, and that doesn't faze him as he bullies the smaller KCP for 2 points in close. And when Denver tried their own version of the double from up top, then shift post coverage, Cat made a beautiful skip pass to put them into rotation, which resulted in some easy points for Gobert down low. It wasn't just Cat who benefited from this though. When Naz Reid was in the game, he too got a fair share of post touches against mismatches, which really shows off their versatility as a team. And for a cherry on top, they absolutely dominated the possession game, with 62 rebounds to Denver's 43, while basically never turning the ball over. When it all comes together, well, we can do the same game-by-game graphic of Minnesota's offensive rating over the series. Outside of a poor Game 4, they've been pretty consistently around the same range, and Game 6 was their most efficient performance, scoring more than 122 points per 100. So, they had both their best offensive and defensive game at the same time, which is precisely why they won by 45 points after forcing Michael Malone to empty his bench with 10 minutes left. Who knows if we'll see any more adjustments in Game 7, or if all of the chips have been played and it just comes down to performance. But Denver definitely has some tough questions to answer on both ends of the floor, because Minnesota seemingly made every right tweak in an absolutely dominant Game 6 win. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of this game. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.